Pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Why Is That? So for today, I don't know about you, but the climate is getting a bit stifling. Rather humid, and temperatures are getting pretty high, that in certain areas of this place, I can definitely feel the heat. I mean, you probably can't already tell, or perhaps you can. I don't really know at this point. I'm kind of just so distracted by most of the heat that, well, I'm kind of forgetting a lot about my channel itself, forgetting a lot in general. All these distractions are pretty much getting to me really quickly. But if there's one thing that I'm not going to forget, it'd be the fact that, well, I still got questions here to answer. And I still do have plenty of them. Too many to count at this point. But the ones that I'm pretty much giving a hot take on for the rest of this entire season of Why Is That is, simply put, just a large random selection I got right here. And there were a few of them by the time I was done picking all of them. But since then, months have passed, and therefore, more questions actually started to come in. Now, I will take these into consideration for, well, what Season 3 is going to be, and, well, I can tell you for one, it is going to be a while before I have Season 3 to work on, and probably even more so with all the other new content that I'm going to have pretty soon. But until any of that happens, well, let's just see what we got here for Part 2. So, Season 2, question number 45, if my memory serves right. And the question that I have, number 45 out of 65 for the season itself, is, why is that rendering times used to take so long? And you know what? I feel like it's a great time to simply give out a little highlight to this because, after all, I have talked about some of these things in the past, and they are not so great. The rendering times back then were quite tedious and annoying, but today, they actually are somewhat manageable. I do kind of wish that, well, even with super complex construction on the production, that rendering times would not take as long as they usually do, because after all, I've actually talked about a lot associated with Nerf's Secret Reveal Bolts of Intrigue, the re-release version of Part 1 of Bolts of Intrigue, and in general, that 51-minute long film, I distinctly remember that a grand total of 20 hours it took for it to completely render, because I've actually talked about a few things about, well, the production in general, especially with the fact that I had to do a process of, well, adding a little bit of stuff to it, because there were crap tons of clips, a lot of subtitles, a lot of, well, other things, including the title card and the credits, as well as sound effects and background music and a bunch of other things that I had to add on to it. So the process basically started with a whole ton of clips put together in the way that I wanted them to be, and then I simply had it rendered completely, and then ended up removing all of the clips, and then just simply had the finished product there, reapplied to the timeline itself, and added on other things in there, including titles and other things here and there. And I basically kept repeating that pattern of rendering the film itself after things are added on that I wanted to put on there, and then taking that same exact project after it's completely rendered and then putting it back onto the timeline, and then adding new stuff on until finally it was all done. A lot of sound effects, a lot of background music, a lot of scenes and dialogue and monologue for the most part, because there have been a lot of moments that monologue would appear in the re-release of Part 1. And after all, it is a re-release version of it, so there was quite a lot that I had managed to add on to it. It was more than double the time that it was last August. I mean, that was about a whole year ago now. It's crazy to think that how much I was able to accomplish in, well, 9 months that it followed. But now, it's been an additional 3 months. And to talk about Bolts of Intrigue in general while I'm at it, I do actually have quite a bit of progress for it. But I will say for sure that, well, just maybe, the film itself is definitely going to have a lot of new things added on to it itself, especially given to the the fact that part 2 itself is going to have a lot of, well, new attributes to it, as well as a lot more. But I will actually have them both combined and made for a release on January 1st, 2021, which would make it the first ever full-length feature film that I've officially put together and put onto my channel. Even though, well, Bolts of Intrigue was definitely not the first ever full-length feature film related project that I've officially had in my lifetime. As a matter of fact, what I could do one day is I could simply just take in a lot of, well, older projects that I've had from the last 10 years, 15 maybe, and then have them uploaded to my channel. Because I had made a lot of different, well, full-length feature film related things out there. And in general, I'd say I'm pretty good at this stuff. And now I'm pretty much progressing over towards a more professional sort of perspective on it. Because now at age 21, I'm simply going to have a lot of new things around, tons of new ideas. But if there is one thing that probably is going to get on the way, it's obviously the rendering times. I mean, 20 hours it took for part 1, the re-release version, to completely render with everything added onto it. All the sound effects, visual effects, and whatnot that were all over the place. All the scenes, dialogue, monologue, title card and credits and end credits scene even. It took quite a while to make. And even more so with the rendering processes that I had to put into play. 20 hours I had to wait for the whole entire thing to render. But I guess one could only imagine how long I would possibly have to wait just for part 2 to pretty much be rendered, then released. After all, that thing is probably going to be about 60 minutes in length, although I might even change it because, well, who knows what might come along. But anyways, that's pretty much all I got to talk about based on rendering times in general, and a lot of projects are definitely going to have a lot of rendering times on them, depending on how long they are and how complex they happen to be. If Bolts of Intrigue Part 1 re-release version had been very difficult to tend to because of its really long rendering times, then who knows what else could come about. But until then, I'm Jay Nowak. This has been Wise Dad, and if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.